All right, here we go.
Time for the Sunshine State Showdown, covering every top sports story in the state of Florida, from South Beach to the state capitol and everything in between. And now, without further ado, your hosts, Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Welcome in, folks. Sunshine State Showdown on a Friday, covering the biggest sports stories in the state of Florida. Your hosts bringing you the action. I'm Brandon Kravitz. He's Zac Blobner. You'll hear from him. I'm sure he'll be yelling at me in a minute. iHeartRadio family of networks is where we reside. We're on air in Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville. Coming up on the show today, we'll check in on the voice.
This guy. Where's my pause,
This
bro?
is like the
You give me the pause.
You said that
Give me the pause.
if I make it feel like it's forced, it's not going to happen. So I just roll right through. I act like I'm going to continue talking. I have a built-in pause in my mind ready for this. I just don't let you know about it. It's the trick of the trade.
Isn't there like a part of you, though, that wants to know if you pause, if I'll do it? Like, isn't there a piece of you that's just like, will he do it if I pause?
That sounds like a Monday thing. That's what that sounds like. We've got the voice of Miami sports, Michael Lubitz, hopefully joining us a little bit later on if he remembers to answer his phone. Could Mackenzie Milton return to UCF in 2020 and so much more? Yes, we get schedule talk for you, too, coming up in a matter of seconds. Here he is, folks. That's Zac Blobner, the Gardner Minshew of the Sunshine State Showdown. You are the jort-wearing jester of this show.
It's ironic because I was going to call you the Mike Glennon of the show, so this fits perfectly, Brandon. Thanks for that beautiful setup.
It's sort of tall and awkward and unaccomplished. Is that?
But I was going to start with overpaid. Those other parts were, after the fact. No, all jokes aside, weird to see that today. I'll be honest. I forgot his name, and he was in Tampa, obviously. I forgot all about Mike Glennon. The only time we bring him up is when we're talking about like former Buccaneer quarterbacks, and his name lasts all of 5 seconds. And the only reason it even lasts 5 seconds is because we love comparing him to Napoleon Dynamite. So it's a situation for sure that it's weird to see his name again. Even weirder the fact that it's in Florida.
He is an important part of the revolution of the quarterback position. I think it was Mike Glennon and Brock Osweiler that officially made us realize as football fans and analysts that just because you're 6'6" or taller, that doesn't mean you're going to be successful because you can see over the offensive line.
Both of those guys also got like more lucrative deals, weren't from the teams that drafted them. They were from other teams.
Because people get excited. They're like, oh my God, they completed 7 passes and they're 6'6". Oh my God, he could see over the line. Do you know that?
And ironically,
they get their they get their passes batted at the line more than anybody else. Is the ironic part.
Well, they're throwing down. It's like Shaq with free throws. But on the flip side of it, we've had all these, shorter quarterbacks coming into the league the last few years through the draft. And for the most part, they're doing okay so far. I mean, Baker didn't have a great season, but I think there's still some flashes from what he's shown that he can be a starting franchise quarterback for some time to come. Kyler Murray, obviously, also in the mix there. I mean, it's not even like these guys are short per se, but being not super freakishly tall like a Mike Glennon or Brock Osweiler, it's not as much of a deterrent between the 32 teams as it used to be.
So I think
Ryan Mallett was another one. Ryan Mallett was another tall guy.
One. He was really bad. I think we buried the lead, by the way. I don't think we ever mentioned the reason why we're bringing up Mike Glennon in the first place. He signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has been made a backup quarterback for Gardner Minshew. And the report came out along with it that said that any free agent quarterback that has had discussions with the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have been out front and telling them, you are the backup. We are not signing a starting quarterback. Gardner Minshew's our guy. So, man, talk about hitching your wagon. There are some guys in the NFL that have either come in with more draft buzz or have been around longer or more accomplished that don't get the support as the starting quarterback for that franchise as Gardner Minshew does. Mitch Trubisky's looking around like, really? I was drafted 2nd overall. They're already handing
Mitch
the keys.
Is in year 4, by the way, though, right? Like, he's heading into year 4.
And
so
he wasn't
he's
drafted
a little
in the
further
6th round, and it's not like the Jags were outstanding last year. Anyway, that concludes your Mike Glennon talk for the day. Ring the bell. Time for the
I
opening
had 10
round.
more minutes of Glennon in me. No, I'm just kidding.
You catch that on the post show. Let's talk schedules, shall we? We get the schedule released last night. I saw Zach's big mug on a Facebook Live with your buddy Aaron over there, the WDAE. You guys were breaking it down.
Man, I don't know if they give out crowns or awards or anything else shiny for this, but if there is such a thing as the Stream King, the Sultan of streaming royalty, it is I. And I'm not saying that in a bragging way. I'm saying that in a way that I've spent so much time in a little box on computer screens and mobile screens that I think this is my life now. Like, this little box you see me in, this is my life now, Brandon. I never get outside of this little box. Help me.
help Zach. Yeah, start a GoFundMe to help Zach get out of the tiny little box. I did just write that down. I plan on using that later in the show. The Sultan of Stream. That is very good. We'll get in deep to this in a second with the Bucs, the Jags, and the Dolphins, the good and the bad and the weird of their schedules. But just in a larger scope of things, schedule-wise, do you put any weight into this when they release the schedule? Or are you more of a, hey, things change, you never know what's going to happen kind of guy? How do you look at this genuinely? And we can drum it up when we start talking about it, of course, but do you put weight into a schedule at this point?
I do. I use this analogy. Geez, I guess technically analysis too, but I use this analogy pretty much every year. I'm the kind of guy that'll sit down and watch as many movie trailers as I can find. Whether it's a movie that's like 3 years away or 3 days away, I will watch the trailer. If there's a movie coming out and they put out 10 trailers, I want to see every single one. I enjoy that. I think it is a good, even though not like a hardcore, like for sure indicator, it is a good indicator. It lets you know a little bit what to expect, and it can kind of let you into the mind of what you're going to see at some point on the big screen. And that's how I view the schedule release, right? Like, you can have a great trailer and still have a bad movie, vice versa. You can have a bad trailer, but for the most part, it gives you at least an idea of what to expect. And that's, again, how I go about my business with the schedule release in the NFL. So I can look through the teams and the games and the weeks, and I can say, okay, well, this, and it doesn't mean that they'll win or lose in this span, but this will be a harder span for them to win. They'll be less likely. They'll be more likely to win here. This is going to be an exciting one. For me, and you do as well, hopefully we get to do it again this year, we work on football Sundays. We do the fantasy fix in all these markets, including Tampa Bay. Shout out to Miami, Jacksonville, and Orlando as well. I just mentioned Tampa Bay. But me and you, we the schedule matters to us, at least when it comes to work, right? So, like, there's that aspect of it too. The holidays are in the fall, so there's just so much planning that goes into it. And there's people, from the fans' point of view, that's from a work point of view. From a fan's point of view, there's people already booked flights and are booking hotels. Even now in the pandemic, there's people doing that yesterday. So it is important. Is it an indicator if the team's going to have a good or bad season? Absolutely not. Is it an indicator of what you can maybe expect at certain points, both on and off the field in your own life because of those schedules and games? Absolutely.
So I'm sort of with you, but I kind of break it up into chunks. I think the beginning absolutely matters. Your first 5 or 6 weeks, especially if you have an early bye, what are you doing until you get to that point? Because we've seen teams that the statistics show us every year, the teams that start hot typically end up making the playoffs. There are those rare occasions where you have teams that get really good at the end of the season. What were you going to say?
Can I amend that for just one reason?
What?
I agree with you, with the exception of week one, because it's a total crapshoot. And every year there's 1 or 2 teams that get beaten week one, and you're like, by who? And it doesn't make any sense. And we've seen it. I brought this up earlier. 2 years ago, Ryan Fitzpatrick walked into New Orleans and lit up the Saints, who ended up going to the playoffs and making a hell of a run. So with the exception of week one, I do believe that, like you said, yes, it is a good indicator those first few games. If you're going to be able to survive the season.
You're always going to have to factor in. This is why I try not to put too much in it, because that there are going to be there's those oddity games where you win a game you're not supposed to, you lose a game that you're not supposed to, and everything kind of balances itself out. But at the beginning of the season, I'm not looking at single games. That's why I said I'm looking at stretches. What are you doing for 4 weeks in a row? Especially at the beginning, because you can lose that game that you're supposed to win in week one, but if you win the next 3, you're still 3-1 and you're in a really good spot. So I look at that. How many weeks in a row are you on the road? How many weeks in a row are you at home? What are you doing after your bye week? Do you have short weeks? All of those things matter no matter who you're playing or what shape they're in when you get to that point in the season. Chris is calling the first round. We still have our entire breakdown of these teams that we have queued up for you guys, so we'll have that around the corner. But all of that matters. I try not to put too much into the back end of the season, like 12 and on. At that point, the season just always becomes something that we could have never predicted. For the most part, you have some teams that are exactly what they thought they would be, and you have others that, whether it's due to injury or just disappointment or where the hell did that come from, it's hard to know. You could be looking at a game, you play the Bengals in week 15. What if the Bengals are good this year? We assume they're going to suck, but they might not. And so that's where, you can't get too ahead of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you could even make that argument like after the season starts, though. I'll kind of delve into it a little bit more. I do think the back half, especially the last 3 or 4 games, is immensely important because typically, now it might be harder to predict, just like things further ahead in time are, right? Something tomorrow is easier to predict than something in 3 months, but I do think that it's equally as important how you finish in the slate that you have at the end of the schedule, including a bye week. And look, I'm not, again, without giving away the tease here, the Bucs have their bye week and an easy stretch to end the year. I think that's going to be pivotal for this team as they try to make the postseason for the first time in a long time. All right, aggressive, very aggressive, Chris aggressive.
Chris is getting all kinds of upset that you have just blown through the bell. I think that
you blew through the bell. I was off it.
I was finishing a rock solid point, and then this guy just you just started doing your own thing. And that's how you get disqualified. This guy's going to kick you off the show. Ridiculous. We've got the good and the bad of all 3 in-state teams next.
I'm good to keep going. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, no problem. Just get heads up before we go back live. Or, you know what I'm saying.
I don't know why I'm turning my microphone off.
Good.
Luby's ready to rock and roll.
Cool. Perfect.
You guys ready for Seg 2?
Hell yeah.
All right.
Let's rock.
Now, back to the Sunshine State Showdown with Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Hit us up on social media. I'm at Brandon Kravitz. He's at Zach on the mic. And don't forget to follow our family of radio stations carrying us all across the Sunshine State. At 96.9 The Game, at The Game Jax, at 940 WINZ. Zach, the Sultan of Stream, ready to go with me here on a Friday. We're closing it down. We had the NFL schedule release last night. So what does this mean for us inside of the Sunshine State? We will start with the Miami Dolphins. I'm going to give you the good and the bad, and I even have a weird for them. There's just a weird oddity in their schedule. The good for the Miami Dolphins, at Jacksonville in week 3. So that by itself is a positive. And that's before taking on the Seahawks at home and then the 49ers on the road. So nice to get a gimme win before you have to take on those two difficult teams. They get both LA teams at home in back-to-back weeks. That's a huge positive for the Miami Dolphins because they get that benefit of travel lag from those two teams that are traveling across the country. The toughest game on their schedule is Kansas City, week 14. That one's in Miami. That'll be a hot ticket. We'll ask Luby about that one next. And that gives them some time to gel and get ready for that one because you wouldn't want to have that out of the gate for a team that's added all of these new pieces and could be breaking in a new quarterback. And then Burrow and the Bengals in week 13. Hopefully that's as interesting as it looks on paper. Like I said, I predicted this, that they were going to put that game towards the end of the season. They did that. Burrow versus Tua would be phenomenal. That's the good of it. The weird of it is that they have a back-to-back game against the same team. And this is the first time this has happened since 1991 in the NFL.
With a bye week sandwiched in between, right?
Week 10, it's the Jets. Bye week. And then week 12, they play the Jets again. So they get a lot of Jets in the matter of 3 weeks. The bad of their schedule, they like as I mentioned, they get Seattle and San Francisco in back-to-back weeks. They finish the season at Buffalo, which is always an issue for the Miami Dolphins. And Belichick, they go up against the Patriots in week 1. That means Bill gets the entire offseason to game prep for the Dolphins. That's not a good sign for week 1. That's the good, the weird, and the bad.
Yeah, we got pretty much the same here. I mean, obviously, anytime you have to play the defending champs with their roster pretty much intact, it's dangerous too. They get the Chiefs at the middle of December, right? December 13th, I think. And then I circled on the good side, the Raiders around Christmas. You don't expect the Raiders to be outstanding this season. I could see them kind of, fizzling there at least later in the year. You get into December and you play them. And this is a Las Vegas team that can be very beatable then. Now, will the Dolphins be trying to jockey for that extra wild card slot that they added to this year, or will they be looking for draft position by then? I don't know if beating the Raiders will be what you want to do when you get to that point, but everything else, man, I got the same here. And again, just to reiterate on the Jets back-to-back with the bye week in between, so you'll see when we get to the Bucs schedule, they have something similar, except for there's not a bye week in between, so they play another opponent. And we know that the league scheduled a lot of this stuff with all these teams based on if they have to move the first 2 games to the end of the season,
right,
and if they potentially have to cancel weeks 3 and 4. So a lot of division games, although different opponents, but most of the teams' divisional games line up on the same weeks for good reason. It's just going to be damn weird seeing the Jets and Dolphins smash into each other twice in 3 weeks with no game in between.
Yeah. I'll give you the Jags, and then you can. I would hate to end on the Jags because there's just not a lot there to fall in love with schedule wise. The good for them, if you're being optimistic about them putting their best foot forward to win, they only play 2 playoff teams from last year in the first 8 weeks of the season. So I told you, I put a lot of stock into that. That's at least a net positive for them. Now they're probably going to be underdogs in those games. Also, they don't travel to London anymore, so they don't have to deal with that, which isn't so much a problem in regards to getting to London. It's the travel back and then getting ready for the following week. They have 2 home games bookending their 1 trip out west. That's week 8 against the LA Chargers. So that's easy travel-wise. And they're home against the Steelers. So not so much, I'm not saying that's good in terms of a win, but that could resemble a sellout at the Jags Stadium. So that's a positive. And the bad is
not of Jags fans.
Well, sellout. I mean, I'm just more so speaking for the cons in this one, not the cons in the CONS, but the cons in the KHAN.
The owner. Okay, I got you.
The bad for them is they're one of the worst teams in the league, so they have to play a schedule and they're going to lose most of their games. Anyway, your thoughts?
There's more to it.
Okay, no,
that.
I know. Week 13, 14, and 15. I had it ready. I was joking. Week 13, 14, and 15, they're at Minnesota. Then they play Tennessee. Was in the AFC title game last year, and then they're at Baltimore. So if they are in a position at the end where they're trying to lose games, those teams ought to help them out. That's the bad of it.
That's identically what I wrote down. Week 13 through 15 at Minnesota, home against the Titans, at Baltimore. And the only word I put next to it, and this is all I'll add, yikes.
Their schedule, honestly, if they were good, their schedule isn't that daunting.
Minus that stretch. That 3-week stretch is going to be 0-3. You cannot convince me that they're going to win any of those games. But who knows? Crazy stuff happens.
No, the back end of their schedule, much more difficult than the front half. But we've seen that. If a team were to start 5-1 in their first 6 games, that team's making it to the playoffs. They'll find a way. And especially now that you get 7 teams in.
I can see, like a fun Gardner-Burrow Minshew matchup in week 4,
that'll be a fantasy fest. That'll be a fantasy fest.
Absolutely. That could be a fun one. So that's one I'll kind of, I won't go out of my way to watch it, but that's one I'll definitely have an eye on. I mean, you certainly will be saying, if especially, I don't know, the bye weeks were way too far behind for that part. But if you're starting quarterback, let's say you draft Tom Brady, let's say that's their bye week. It's not, but let's say it is. Yeah, maybe you take a flyer on Burrow or Minshew for that week.
Or if you wait on quarterback, those are 2 guys that you might want to target later.
Not as a starter though. Yeah, you want to stash those guys as your backups.
I might be in a situation where I would start Joe Burrow, not Gardner Minshew. But
stop it.
Joe Burrow to me would be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. We'll save that conversation for another day, but I think he's top 10.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That might be next week.
Especially
we might have to have a fantasy day.
If they keep AJ Green, I mean, their weapons are ridiculous.
Stop it.
And their defense is terrible. That makes for incredible fantasy juju.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love it. Anyway, give me the Bucs.
We'll save that for another day.
The good, the bad, and the weird of the Bucs.
I cannot believe you.
What you
Seems
got?
we do. I have some good things written down. You got me all riled up. Talking about Joe Burrow as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. What the hell?
Write that down.
All right.
I would take him ahead of Aaron Rodgers.
The Bucs. Okay, wait. Let me just take a deep breath here. Because I
wouldn't even hesitate.
You are
I would
ridiculous.
not even hesitate.
Stop it, because I'm going to freak out on you so badly. So the Bucs, we're talking Bucs. We're not talking about any of the crazy BS that you're throwing out there right now. So when it comes to the Bucs, first of all, 5 primetime games, we nailed that. We talked about it yesterday. Yep. We were pretty confident about it. And with the 5 primetime games, that's more than they've had in the last several years combined.
That's more than they had in 2003 after they won the Super Bowl.
It's crazy. So the Brady bump is what we're calling it in Tampa. It's affectionately known as that. The good is that they come off their bye week at the end of the season. Now, they play Kansas City. That's going to be rough, but they go into their bye week, week 13. And when they come out, they play Minnesota. So they have 2 weeks to get ready for them. And it's at home at Raymond James. Tough team, but again, 2 weeks at home. Then they go Atlanta, up in Detroit, Atlanta. So they play the Falcons twice in 3 games and a most likely, middle of the road at best Detroit team sandwiched in there, which makes you feel good if you're a Bucs fan and they have to win, 3 out of 4 down the stretch or 2 out of 3, or even if they're jockeying for home field position or the NFC South. That's a great scenario for them to be in, to have their fate in their hands. Obviously, if they win or lose, we'll get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's a great position to be in. Now, to start the year, they travel to New Orleans, which seems daunting. And I personally would have rather had them play Carolina, who they see in week 2. In week 1, just from like a cupcake standpoint, you see that in college a lot. But the Saints are probably going to have an empty Superdome for that game. We don't know if fans are going to be back in. And if they are, it won't be a full stadium, I would imagine, personally, in week 1. So although I don't like the Saints as the starting team in week 1 for the Bucs to have to travel to them and Brady to try to get his feet beneath them there, it could be a lot worse. Real quick, those primetime games, we talked about it. They start a weird stretch, not as weird as Jets bye-week Jets like Miami, but they play Chicago up in the Windy City on a Thursday nighter, right? They travel back to Tampa with some extra time to get ready for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers at Raymond James Stadium the following Sunday at 4 o'clock. And then they go Sunday night, Monday night, Sunday night, prime time. And it's a heck of a stretch for them there, Brandon, because they'll go to see Las Vegas, then New York. And then in there, the Saints come back and they'll be at Raymond James for the round 2 version of Brady and Brace. So it's not that those primetime games and that stretch is particularly super difficult. It's just a matter of a lot of sunshine, a lot of spotlight, and whether or not this team will be ready for it, by that middle-ish part of the season.
Yeah, and you're right. That's I think it's good that you go Raiders, Giants. It's the only back-to-back road games on the season. Actually, on the back end, they have back-to-back Falcons, Lions, but your back-to-back road games are not against difficult competition.
With an extra day in between.
And I think it's interesting that all of their primetime games, now they could end up getting flexed if they're as good as we think they could be, and Brady and Gronk are still healthy. They're going to get flexed into primetime at the end of the year. But it's interesting what the NFL did in scheduling these older or brittle. I mean, Brady's not brittle, but he's old, and Rob Gronkowski is brittle. A lot of these primetime games in the middle of the season, didn't want to have to mess with an ugly Bucs situation at the end of the year. I think that's smart, and it seems like that's the way that they handled it. But they are in primetime left and right. Let's keep in mind, too, that 425 window, that says primetime. I agree. That's one of the most watched programs of the year in anything, is that 4 o'clock window. So that's kind of like primetime, too. And man, Fox is just salivating that they now have Tom Brady. They get the Brady bump too. You get it. We get it. You're the home of the Bucs. We're the home of the Bucs, and we're all excited. Around the corner, we've got Mike.
No cold weather games, Brandon. No cold weather games for the Bucs.
So Tom will be. Well, I don't know if that's a good thing. Tom loves cold weather. He plays so well.
Toasty Tom.
Yeah.
Toasty Tom.
Michael Lubitz is toasty. He's ready for us next.
You guys ready?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Showdown with your hosts, Brendan Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Time for some added insight. Let's head to the Sunshine State Hotline.
I know when that hotline blink.
Tua might be number one on the field, but he is number one in our hearts. Michael Lubitz on air, 940 WINZ, Miami Sports. Luby, before I get too excited, we've been breaking down the NFL schedule release so far on this show. Are you a schedule release guy? We've talked and gotten into all types of ridiculous conversations and things that we get excited about. Is this one of those that I can feel you rolling your eyes, but you can tell me whether or not that's actually happening?
Well, I will say one, Brandon Kravitz, and a good afternoon to you, Mr. Zac Blobner. What I will say is you did our show every week. We were honored and privileged to have you doing fantasy every week. So you got the vibe of the Defo show. I think I'll let you answer that question. Look, it's funny. Growing up, I probably would have been. I'm not going to lie. I'm a sportsaholic kind of guy. But again, I've done the show with Jeff DeForest, who is a legend down here in South Florida, and he's a legend for doing a different kind of sports show. He does sports a little differently, and now it's been 10 years. So I've sort of picked up on that. I like it internally. I think it's cool to look at it. But to sit here and do the breakdown, and I get it, like in this day and age, right now, literally this day and age, the COVID-19 effect, that we have no sports. We're clamoring for any sports we can get. I don't know, doing a 4-hour show like ESPN did and doing entire shows about it. I don't judge those who do it. Personally, I don't know, like we see with the NFL year in, year out, so many teams turn over and so many teams go from good to bad and bad to good that I don't know how much you can put into what the schedule says in May 8th.
A lot, in my opinion, Michael. I don't even know why we have to play it anymore. I mean, let's just – no, you know, it's funny. I was telling Brandon before we brought you on here today, I was like, I love movie trailers. I love the movies way more, but I love movie trailers. And that's kind of how I look at the schedule release. And look, for the Dolphins, when it comes to this, we're all viewing it the same way, whether we're in Miami, whether we're in the state of Florida, whether we're a Bama fan, a Fins fan, or just a football fan. We're trying to figure out if these games are worth watching. And the only question that says yes or no is if Tua's going to play. If Tua's not playing, I don't know how many of these games you can circle. But let's just, for the hypotheticals, pretend like he will be playing some of these. And certainly the matchup that they have with Cincinnati is one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to circle, hopefully to see Burrow and Tua. I don't know how likely that is, Lubitz. I think that's week 13, if I wrote that down correctly.
Yeah.
That's deep into the season. I mean, look, if we're going to see the fans clamoring for Tua and the Dolphins fold to it, or there's like double injuries to Rosen and Fitzpatrick, you know, week 13 isn't a crazy thing to imagine. What do you think?
But look, if you're looking at the schedule for that I get. But like, and I will talk about that specifically, but I just meant, you know, like last year we looked forward to Rams games. Well, the Rams weren't that great. So to look forward to Rams games in May of 2019 was a lot different than November of 2019. But yes, if you're picking games for the rookie quarterback, I think it's almost 100% will be starting for the Bengals. Okay, so that's interesting from that perspective. Tua, it's funny because he's hurt enough and there's been enough questions with the injuries. We've talked about it ad nauseum that it feels like this could be redshirt year, quote unquote. However, he's already supposedly healthy now, right? Okay. If they're playing week 13, that's December. That's another 7 months from now. If he's healthy now, add another 7 months to it, it's week 13, and you know unequivocally he's good to go. Why wouldn't he be starting? You know, like, and I think that's what this year's going to be for the Dolphins. It's going to be a lot of Ryan Fitzpatrick. But if Tua's ready to go late in the year, you might want to give him a little head start for the season coming up. And that's the kind of game, Devo and I talked about it this morning, actually. I could see that being a game I circle because it would be super cool to see the LSU-Alabama rematch, Joe Burrow versus Tua Tagovailoa.
You sound pretty confident there, Luby. You sound like you got a really good grasp. No, seriously. Like, we've talked about this up and down.
I'm just hoping. We're hoping and we're wishing down in South Florida these days.
I think he's going to start much earlier than week 13.
Really?
I do.
What?
Yeah.
How much earlier? You didn't even think they were going to draft him 3 weeks ago.
No. I didn't. I didn't think they would trade up for him. I got calls from Chris Greer. He's like, hey, Kravitz, could you throw some smoke screens our way? I said, you got it. I got your back. I think Tua is going to start much earlier than that. I don't see
How much earlier?
They say that he's ready to go. And then, so you said that, so December is 7 months away. Well, what about just like 4 months away is September? Yeah. And so if he's good to go and his hip is healed and everything is fine, and by the way, if it wasn't fine, they probably wouldn't have drafted him 5th overall if he wasn't good. He's good. And so if he can play, he can play. This isn't the kind of injury. We've heard this from doctors. This is not like, we heard about Mackenzie Milton yesterday from UCF where he wants to make a comeback. That's the type of injury that can affect you moving forward. This hip injury, you are either healed from it or you're not. And he is. And when you're healed, you're healed. And in some ways, that type of fracture can actually make your bones stronger. Now, I'm not saying that he won't get hurt in other ways, but his hip should be fine. And so if that's the case, then I could see Tua going out there and playing earlier. And if you think the Dolphins,
are you wearing flip-flops today?
I'm not going to hear any of this noise. If you think the Dolphins and Dolphins fans are going to be as patient as week 13, I would like to introduce you to reality. That's not going to happen.
Well, patience and Dolphins, South Florida fans does not go hand in hand.
Thank you.
Admit that. My father had me that ingrained in me from an early age when the Dolphins would win the playoffs every year. Yet, as a 6-year-old, I'd watch my father throw his shoe at the television. So
they booted Don Shula out of the city. Rest his soul.
Exactly. So, and I'm also a Seminole fan who loved Bobby Bowden, and then at the end, after 8 years of mediocrity, was ready to see Bobby Bowden go. And again, the mediocrity was still going to AC Championship game. So in South Florida, we're not patient people, but this year is weird. And just because with COVID and we don't know if there's going to be a season, and they do have Fitzpatrick and the injury bug was such a big thing around Tua, I can see them being more patient. Now, the thing is, if he's practicing every week and he looks good and Fitzpatrick has been Fitzpatrick, later in the year, I could see them playing him. Early in the year, I just don't know what you're rushing him for. That's my thing. Yeah, you're right. This isn't ACL where you can re-injure it or you can make it worse. It's the kind of thing it's either healed or not. That's true.
Exactly.
But it's still a major injury, and it's a major injury for your top 5 pick. So to me, they're going to be bad. And also their offensive line was dreadful. Their offensive line was abysmal. So are you rushing to put him behind that offensive line before you know exactly what it is?
Zachary?
I'm beside myself. I mean, the amount of like A to B you went from there, Brandon, in literally just a few short weeks.
I don't understand what I'm saying. That's so crazy.
Now you're trying to start him week 1. You went from
I didn't say week. I never said week 1.
So when do you think he starts though? You said earlier. I'll give you that.
I think that you down. I don't think any. Okay, not any earlier than week 3 against Jacksonville. Not any later than week 7 home against the LA Chargers.
You think early?
I'll put that somewhere in between 3 and 7. Can I give you a window since it's May? I don't have to tell you the date.
Sure. And then in three months, Luby, he'll be saying it's between weeks 2 and 4, and it's just
Time out. Can I just defend myself, because I think I'm being extremely consistent. You guys are painting me like I'm just all over the place, like I'm wacky Kravitz over here. Okay, that's not the case. All right, I said that I had a feeling, because I bought the smoke screen like a moron. I had a feeling that the Dolphins were worried about the injury. They obviously weren't, because they took him. They told me on draft day, hey, you idiot, you're wrong. So, okay, now you've told me that you think he's healthy enough to get drafted, which means, based on what I know from what the doctors have said, is that if he's healed, he's good to go. If they draft him and they say he's good, then he's good to go for the start of the season. That is linear thinking, gentlemen.
Yeah.
I want to play. Can we get a little hooked on a feeling for him? Can we get some music going? Hooked on a feeling over here. All right, I'm going to pivot because we're going to keep going crazy here with these comments. Lubitz, I want to ask you, let's look at week 1. It's the matchup that at least we know, right, the most of, because it's the earliest, it's the beginning. Now, obviously, it could always, I guess, not happen. Like, that's potential there, at least when it's set to in September. But Patriots, Dolphins, opener, we're guessing Jared Stidham will be the guy. Obviously, we know what happened the last time the Dolphins traveled to New England. Can you just look at that matchup a little bit and what you, from the outside looking in, way ahead expect in it?
I don't know. The early spreads seem like they still think Tom Brady's the quarterback, and I feel like that's a little weird. Like the Dolphins did win 5 games with a team that for the first half of the season was one of the worst teams in football history. They go and sign Byron Jones. Xavier Howard should be back healthy. The receiving core actually turned out to be really strong, and Preston Williams is coming back. Gesicki, Devontae Parker had the seasons they were supposed to have when they were first drafted by the Miami Dolphins. And Fitzpatrick found a groove. Like I don't know. The Patriots are such a big question mark, man, because everyone keeps doing this thing. Well, they've won without Brady before. It wasn't your sit-em. Like they won with Jacoby Brissett, who had been in their system, and they were a better unit around Jacoby Brissett, so they didn't ask much. They won with Jimmy Garoppolo, who had been there for years at that point, and by then the cat was out of the bag. He was going to be great. The Patriots wanted him to be their future, so you knew what you had in him. We don't know what Jarrett Stidham is. I liked him at Baylor coming out of college. He then transferred to Auburn. Okay, so he must not have been that great. At Auburn, he was sort of and he was a late-round pick. So to assume he's going to pick up the mantle from Brady, to me, I think that's naive, and I think it's ignorant. And I understand how great Belichick is, but when Castle had success, people forget Randy Moss and Welker were on that team. Like, Castle winning he won 11 games without Brady. Yeah, it was with Randy Moss and Wes Welker. Like, that's why he won 11 games. When he did it without Brady, we don't know. Because one thing Brady you can say for was healthy the majority of his career. So we really don't know this. And the defense was solid most of last year. But late in the year when I had to play really good offense, it wasn't that good, that defense. So what are you relying on when you're the Patriots? So to me, to assume they're just going to take the mantle, that's why when people keep doing these, who's going to have a better year, the Patriots or the Bucs? It's easy, the Bucs to me. Because the Bucs had a really good team by the end of the year last year, and the quarterback couldn't get out of their way. So even if Brady's old and done, he doesn't turn the ball over. So the Bucs should be a good team next year. The Patriots, by the end of the year, looked and a lot of it was Brady, and now he's gone.
You know, for a guy who doesn't break down NFL schedules, you just did a really good job with it. We appreciate it.
Do it. We just don't do it.
I can do it. I choose not to do it. Michael Lubitz on air, 940 WINZ, Miami Sports. Thanks so much, Luby. We appreciate it. Have a good weekend, my friend.
You too, guys. I'll talk to you Wednesday.
Let me ask you a hypothetical, Zach, before we duck in a quick break. Okay,
Man.
If you were planning to go on a road trip, but your car was making you a little nervous, so you put it in the shop, okay? And then they fixed up your car and they said, hey, you're good to go. Are you going to wait a month before going on that road trip, or are you just going to go because they said, hey, your car's good? You just go. They fixed it. It's done. It's either fixed or it's not, because if it's not, then you have to drive it back to the shop and they got to fix it. But they told you that it was good and you trust this mechanic, okay? That's Tua. He's either good to go on this road trip or he's not.
Did you just ask me the question and then
I answered the question because I knew the answer? It was rhetorical because I'm right.
Answer. You don't say to somebody, if it's a rhetorical question, you don't say, hey, let me ask you a question. The whole idea of rhetorical is you just ask it.
I'm all fired up. What's your answer?
And rhetorical questions you don't have to answer. That's the whole point. My answer is that it depends. How far is the road trip? If it's a far road trip, like 16 games in an NFL season, I'm going to rethink if I want to take it all 16 states, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I can make it 16. I can probably make it 4 or 5. And then I'm going to shorten that and do it, in a much closer schematics, map. So there's a lot that goes into it. Listen, I'm with you. Like, I think that Tua has to play. I think he has to play. But do I think he has to play in September or October? No, not really. Not if this team. I mean, this team's not going to win a Super Bowl this year. They're just not.
No.
And to know that, there's no rush to get Tua on the field.
Hey, look, they won. They were trying pretty hard last year, and they were in the tank. So I expect them to put their best foot forward. And if that's Tua at quarterback, then that's what I expect to see. Around the corner, close it down on a Friday. Coast to Coast is next.
Whew. All right, so couple things here. Can Brandon hear me too, or is it just us, Chris?
I got you.
Okay, so are we bringing Chris in for this segment? Both video. Okay, we're doing video as well.
Do you have video set up? Are you able to do that?
So I have the video up, but I was thinking about that. If I need to monitor the bed music for Coast to Coast as well as when to hit the close music, it might just be better for me to stay off video.
Okay. It's your call, man. I'm cool with it either way. I just wanted to clarify.
All right.
Hey, how about this for you? Let's do this then. Where's shows in short commercial break? Okay, I'll change the bottom line. Actually, let me add one. Let me add a banner here. Coast to coast with Chris Vazquez. It's got a good ring to it. A lot of C's. I love alliteration. If you guys haven't figured that out yet, big fan.
So you are doing
Big
it?
fan.
Yeah, or nay?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay.
Wait, do what? Coast to coast, but not the video, right?
Correct.
Okay, that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah, we're on the same page. I got it ready. Okay.
All right.
So this needs to be yesterday. We timed it out pretty good, and we were at about 44 minutes. So how many minutes do we have to work with here?
I don't know why I'm holding talk back. I've been doing the math. So the first two segments were each about 11:50. So that's about
24.
20. Yeah, we'll go 24. And then that last segment was 14.
38.
So I'm about 10 minutes.
And then add 15 minutes worth of commercials. So we're at about 53 right now.
So we have 6 minutes. We need to be out at 59. You'd rather be
that's
short.
What we were aiming for, though. Yesterday, bro, we did our coast to coast was like we had too much time.
It was like a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So we'll shoot for about 6 minutes here.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then all right. We ready?
Rock and roll.
Rain or shine, these guys have you covered. Now back to the Sunshine State Showdown with Brandon Kravitz and Zac Blobner.
Welcome back to the show. This segment brought to you by KeepFloridaGoing.com. Find out which businesses in the state are opening back up where you can get takeout this weekend, get your car serviced. Not like in the analogy we were talking about in the last segment. I'm talking about legitimate car service. All of that. KeepFloridaGoing.com. Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville. Don't forget, if you miss our show live, you can find the podcast available daily. Check it out on the iHeartRadio app. We close out the show every day like this, a little coast to coast.
Coast to coast and throws it down.
Well, look who decided to show up. It's Chris Vazquez, the master of master control. Take it away, Chris.
All right, let's start here in the NFL. Zach, Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson, or Peyton Manning and Tiger Woods. The rematch between Mickelson and Tiger. Who you got?
So, in football terms, I'll take Brady throwing to Mickelson any day of the week. In golf terms, I definitely take Tiger over Phil. And I feel like without knowing anything about either's golf game, Peyton's had some more time off recently. He's probably in a better golfing shape right now than Brady. I know Brady's been golfing in Tampa Bay, multiple sightings out on a couple different courses. But I'm going to go with Manning and Tiger. I feel like you have to.
I think that for the most part, you're way off base here. I worry more about Tiger Woods' health than anybody that is playing in this foursome. And if you're telling me, if you're telling me like on the street, like we used to play when we were in 5th grade, I would take Manning and Tiger all day. If Tiger's healthy enough to run, how's Mickelson covering him? He's not an athlete. He's a golfer.
So you're worried about Tiger's health on the golf course, but not the street of football? Like, what?
You took Phil Mickelson running routes against Tiger Woods? You would have to be worried about his health if you did that, yet you took Manning and Tiger on the golf course. The two don't line up for either one of us. Neither one of us makes sense right now.
Right now? It's far for the course. Golf punt.
All right, the big news of the day. The Jaguars signed backup quarterback Mike Glennon.
The news of the day.
Woo!
Yes.
Woo!
How many quarters will Mike Glennon play this season? The over-under we will set at 3, Kravitz.
He's got a better chance of playing quarters in the back with security like Michael Jordan than playing actual quarters of football. I'm going to go with the under. I'm going to go under 3.
I'll go under 3. I mean, I don't think he's going to start any games. I don't think, Minshew's going to want to play as much as possible. So even unless he gets like torn ACL banged up, if he's just kind of, bruised and battered, he'll still play because this is his opportunity to shine. And we can all agree, guys, he's probably not going to get another chance like this to become a franchise quarterback. For him, it's not necessarily do or die, but it's the best opportunity he'll have in his whole life, his whole career. to signal, hey, I can be the guy, not only in Jacksonville, but if there's another team that wants to bring me on and make me the starter, I can do it there too.
All right, you guys just talked about this with Lubitz, so I want one-word answers from each of you.
Oof.
True or false, Tua will be starting for the Fins by their Week 13 matchup with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati.
I don't even need to answer this. Zach?
False. He'll be hurt. He'll have started a game, though.
Ouch. True.
All right. Moving over to the ice. When it comes to both the Lightning and the Panthers, the NHL is leaning towards a 24-team playoff, which would see both teams get into the postseason. Zach, are you on board?
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I mean, it's definitely better for, I think, the Panthers than the Bolts. The Bolts are in a great position. They were coming down the stretch. They wanted to, get even better seeding when it came to the playoffs and try to chase those top teams like the Bruins. The Panthers on the other side, no pun again intended, but clawing their way in, hoping to make it. So if you're the Panthers, it's good, right? Because you're in, you sneak in from what I would understand the scheduling would be. If you're the Lightning, you're indifferent to it.
I think you're pretty much spot on there. I would assume that a 24-team playoff would mean that the playoffs are shorter. That would not bode well for a team like Tampa because of how topsy-turvy the postseason can be. So if you shorten that 7-game series, that's really bad for a team like Tampa who's been bad against bad teams in the playoffs before. But, of course, it's great for the Panthers if they get in.
All right, we will end on this. Moving over to the hardwood. There's a rumored idea coming out of The Athletic. The Magic should trade Aaron Gordon to Golden State for their first-round pick. Kravitz, would you do it?
I need to know where they're picking. This is not
towards the top. It'd be a top 10 pick, right?
Yeah, I mean, they'd probably be top 4, but this isn't the year to yeah, I'll do it. Whatever.
You just sounded like you were going to go for no, and yet the last second you pulled the trigger. Hopefully the Magic are operating on a better platform than that. I'm following your lead based on the argument you made. I wouldn't do it, even though you at the last second decided you would.
I think Aaron Gordon's better than he is better than people give him credit for. He's not as good as he thinks he is. That's where he's in this sort of weird place. But the Magic don't have a great cap situation, so I think just getting a high-end rookie in and getting out of that deal might be an overall positive. It's not an easy decision, though. That covers it for this week. Thanks for spending some time with us. You can hit us up on Twitter throughout the weekend, at Zach on the mic, at Brandon Kravitz. Shout out to Chris Vazquez, our great producer. We're back on Monday, 5 p.m., covering the biggest sports stories in the state of Florida. Find the podcast on iHeart as well. Sunshine State Showdown. Have a great weekend, Florida.